Good afternoon, Ms. Clemons. Thank you again for joining us today for this interview. As I mentioned earlier, I'm very excited to speak with you about your book, The Girl with the Iron Leg.
Thank you.
I guess I'd love to start by asking you, what inspired you to write this book?
There were so many reasons why, because as a child with polio at the age of 7, I had polio at the age of 7, and we were not given a voice about what was happening to our body. I mean, the children were not given a voice. We were told to suck it up. As far as pain, we didn't discuss it. There was no one to talk to about it. So there was a lot of internal trauma, a lot of pain that came with the disease itself, but we were never given permission to talk about it. So I did a lot of writing. I could put it on paper, what was happening to me. And so I've had those papers for maybe 30 years. And I've been talking about writing this book for over 30 years. And that's how that came about. Someone gave me an opportunity. And so I was able to complete the book.
Well, I'm grateful that you were finally able to do it. I know it must have been a lifelong dream of yours. So I'm very happy that you were able to achieve it. One thing that really stood out to me as I was reading is that the tone of it is very childlike. It sounds like it's written by a very smart 7-year-old. Was that intentional? Was it intentional for you to write in the voice of a 7-year-old?
The 7-year-old wrote the book.
Yeah.
Yes, that's her story.
Yeah.
Her name is Little G, Little Griselda, Little G. And then in book 2, I'm writing book 2 right now. In book 2, she becomes Big G. And her vocabulary will increase and increase and increase. But right. Yes, that was definitely done on purpose.
I enjoyed that aspect of it very much. So would you say that writing was in a way a form of inner child healing for you?
Yes, that was the purpose. That was definitely the purpose for writing, because I wrote it for her. Because I'm the one who's here now. I'm the adult who is here now. And so that inner child still had all of that going on, and it had to be displayed in some way so that she could heal.
And one thing that I noticed as well in the book, there were times where you did take on an older tone of voice in the book, and that was when you were pretty much comparing little G to G now, as it were, and how much that period of your life has impacted you even as an adult woman today. So one thing that really resonated for me was when you spoke about people pleasing and issues like that. How do you think that your childhood has impacted you in that way as an adult from a psychological perspective?
I've been in therapy for over 40 years, okay? And it's like an onion. You peel this down, then there's something else and something else and something else. So it's taken a long time for little G to heal. And I'm still in therapy today. And I have a feeling that I won't be for very long, because I'm almost at the end of the journey with my second book. And I feel that I will be completely healed by then. Because I've read so much about behavior and the psychology of the child and so forth and so on, I was making discoveries as I was writing the book. I found a book on people pleasing, and I said, "Oh, that's me." So, or approval addict. That's the name of the book. Approval addict. And so I bought that, and I was able to transfer some of that into the book. And the voice that the old, excuse me, The adult voice that you hear in the book is the narrator, because there are times when little G just needs to step back and let the narrator come in and explain some things.
Right.
Did I answer your question?
Yes, you did. Thank you so much. You spoke also about the psychological, because we all know that polio is a very painful physical disease that attacks the muscles. So I can't imagine the physical pain that you must have went through as a child. But you mentioned in the book that the psychological pain of polio was sometimes more impactful than the disease itself. Would you say that it was the psychological impact of the disease itself, or rather the adults around you and perhaps the lack of emotional support that you did not get from the adults around you?
I'm going to say all of the above, because of the period in which I had polio in the 1950s. That was the era of separation of races, black and white, the Jim Crow, definitely that. And so there wasn't very much available for Black people at that time. And when I was admitted to the hospital, they actually had to find a place to put me, because they didn't have a ward for Black children. And that's why I was put somewhere in a room on a hallway with nobody. I was there by myself. Now the white children, they were on a ward with other children because there were so many of them. So they could communicate, and I was in silence.
Right.
No one to call on, because, they weren't going to do anything.
Yeah. So the psychological impact was systemic as well as from the disease itself.
Yes, definitely. Right. I would say that.
Another question I had was, how did it feel to you as a child seeing the president have polio? How did that make you feel?
That didn't impact me at all. No. But the fact that he had a place that he could go to, Warm Springs, Georgia, that was his place that he purchased because that was a good place to go for rehabilitation. And white children were permitted, but that was for whites only. So that president, I didn't think about him at all.
It wasn't your president?
No. Okay. He wouldn't let me come.
So I also remember seeing that your aunt Ola was completely unaware of the epidemic that was going on and what caused it and what was spreading it. Can you talk some more about the misinformation or lack of information surrounding polio at the time? Was that specific to Black communities, or was it a general lack of information about the disease?
Well, I'll have to say that the information was there because it was on the radio. Television, most people didn't have TV at that time, but it was definitely in the newspaper. They were closing swimming pools. They were closing schools, and but that was white people, because they're the ones who had it, who were visible. The Black children were not visible. So my Aunt Ola, she worked so hard. So she probably didn't have time to listen to a radio or pay attention, because she had to get up early to go to somebody's house who lived way somewhere at the end of a bus line and work all day and then do that same trip home. Like the movie, I can't think of the name of it right now.
Mhm.
But she worked very, very hard.
Yeah.
And then too, she wasn't expecting me to get polio.
Because it was portrayed as a white person's disease.
Well, I mean, my brother and I were just sent there for the summer.
Yeah.
I don't know if you know about how the Black people would send their children to the country. And they stay the whole summer and come back. Well, my mother was going through a divorce at that time, and that was a good time for us not to be at home. And so she had sent us to her sister, Aunt Ola.
Right, and it was a chance trip to the swimming pool that started all of it.
Yes, and I was the only one.
Yeah.
My brother went. My two cousins, Beverly and Howard, went. Other children in the neighborhood went, but I was the one. I say I was chosen.
Yeah.
I was the chosen one.
Yeah. That was another thing I wanted to ask you about, a very funny and quite cute in a childlike way. Part of the book for me was when you all thought that maybe it was the sneaking of the cigarettes that caused it. And all of us were smoking the cigarettes, so why was it only me? So how did it make you feel that you were chosen, as you said? Did you feel any kind of resentment? What kind of emotions did you feel that you were the one that was chosen?
Well, that feeling came to me over a period of years into my adult life, because my father was, I don't know what's wrong. My father was the principal of the Academy for the Colored Blind in Macon, Georgia. And my mother was the matron, which means she took care of the building, not the building. She took care of hiring and firing and the people the employees and the children, the students who came to the building. And so we were around blind children all our life, for 7 years. And so in working with the blind children, I was around disabled people. And you had to learn how to work with them and be with them. And I became the leader for the students when they came. It was good to put a little child with another child, maybe 12 or 13 years old, and let me show the child around. And that child probably wouldn't feel so lonely, because it was a boarding school, by the way. So what I'm saying is, I had been doing that from a little girl. So I was prepared for having polio, which means it didn't destroy me. Yeah. Because I knew that the blind child fell. Come on, get up. You can do it. Come on. Yeah. So
you were somewhat emotionally prepared for it when you got it.
Yes.
Okay. Because I did notice a kind of strength that I did not or would not expect from a child of 7. So it's interesting to see that that's where that came from.
That's where it came from.
Yeah. Another thing that I've been thinking about while reading it was you've lived through both polio and COVID, and I wanted to know what similarities have you seen between the two epidemics or pandemics, as it were, not in the diseases themselves, but just social issues. So we saw the disparity with the vaccine with both COVID and polio between Black and white communities. What similarities did you notice having lived through both of them, and what can that say about progress or lack thereof between those two times?
Okay. After the two vaccines were invented, the science just seemed to drop polio as though it was no more. and they went on to something else because polio had been cured, eradicated, so to speak. And so go on to something else. But that isn't the case. That's a difference between the two right now, COVID and polio. And one thing, since polio is is a virus, it cannot be cured, which means that it comes back 30 years later. And now I'm suffering from post-polio. And that will be in book 2. So, I have to go through polio first and then get to post-polio. And it comes back. And there's nothing you can do about it. There's just nothing you can do about that. So the fact that polio was described as a type of flu, most people thought the child had the flu or the adult had the flu because there was the nausea, the queasy stomach, there was the headache, the sweating, the aches,
fatigue,
Yes, the fatigue. So the doctors couldn't tell whether you had polio or whether you had the flu at that time. But the one thing was the falling and the losing of the strength in the leg or the arm or the lungs. I was very fortunate in that it was just one leg, but other people were in the iron lung, and that was just terrible. But anyway, that was one way that COVID was. It had the chills and the stomach and it was like the flu, but it wasn't the flu. And at the time, there was no cure for polio. And so the researchers had to work really hard to come up with a vaccine. And evidently the vaccine was already in progress for us, for COVID.
Yeah.
I mean, I thought they came up with a vaccine awfully quick.
Very quickly.
Very quickly. It didn't take years and years and years like it did for polio. Polio had been around since, I don't know, the 1800s. Well, maybe so. But that would be another comparison. With the polio, the people wanted to give the children the shot. For the most part. There were those mothers who was afraid.
Right.
That
so we always had the anti-vaxxers.
Yes, they were there. Because to cure the polio, I think polio was in the vaccine. I didn't have to take the shot because I was already immune because I had it.
You had it, yeah.
And I still have it in my body. So it wasn't as bad as it was with the COVID.
Yeah.
Because these were adults. I felt who should have, well, I can't speak for them, but I took my shots.
Yeah. There was a section of the book where, and I know this was you speaking in your 7-year-old voice, where you said that you were very distrustful of Black doctors.
Yes.
And that you would only see white doctors from now on. Can you talk to me about that thought process and whether or how much that has changed over time?
It did change. But the 7-year-old made that decision because 3 Black doctors came to the house. You see, doctors made house calls in the 40s and the 50s. I don't know about the 60s, but I know in the 40s and 50s. And 3 different doctors were called. Let's see, maybe 1 week apart. And all 3 of them said the same thing. Oh, she has a cold, upset stomach. Give her ginger ale and toast. And that's it. all three of them. But my aunt, Bert, in Alabama, had been listening to the news, and she said, no, that's not right. That sounds like Griselda has polio. I'm coming. And she came and took me directly to the hospital, and they kept me immediately. I mean, there was no talking about it. It's to get her upstairs immediately, and you all can go home. So I said to myself, these three doctors, they don't know what they're talking about because I can't walk. What does that have to do with having a flu? I'm 7. I have that much intelligence.
Yeah.
Address the not walking. That wasn't addressed.
Yeah.
And to complete the answer, I did change my mind. The majority of my doctors are Black.
Because I kind of juxtaposed, and I know that that was you as a 7-year-old, and as a 7-year-old, it makes sense for you to come to that conclusion based on your experience. But then we also hear so many reports of Black people being mistreated by white doctors, especially during COVID. Black women, it's like believed that we don't feel as much pain as white women and that kind of thing. So there's just so much racial issues involved in medical system in America. So I wanted your opinion on that kind of intersection of race and medicine and how much that has changed over time.
Well, at that time, Black doctors were not given permission to practice in the hospitals. I could have you could be my doctor, but if I had to go to the hospital, the white doctors took over. And so the Black doctor could not visit you. He could not treat you once you went to the hospital because they weren't allowed. And they were not educated as well as the white doctors.
Yeah.
They kept them
they held them back.
They held them back, yes.
Yeah, and you as a 7-year-old, you wouldn't understand all of that stuff anyway. So you just assumed that they just weren't as good.
They weren't. That's what I felt.
Yeah. As I said, it makes complete sense as a 7-year-old not to understand the politics behind all of that and to come to that conclusion. Unless you had anything else to add about that, I wanted to kind of move on to your writing process and how you work as a creative. So you mentioned that you've been wanting to write this book for 30 years. So what has the whole process been like? And did you had lots of notes from earlier times in your life where you were working through writing that you included in the book?
Yes. In fact, book 1 was almost finished when I was given the opportunity to write it. I just had to actually put it into book form because it was just writing. And I had an editor to work with me also with book 1. And it wasn't difficult to write book 1, but it has been difficult writing book 2 because the emotions are so strong for book 2. But book 1, I enjoyed writing book 1 because of the child and the smoking and the egg on the sidewalk, and it was just kind of
reliving your childhood.
Yes, reliving the childhood. Yes, I enjoyed that.
Yeah. So for book 2, what's the age of the protagonist in book 2?
This time, let's see, we end at 3rd grade, I think. 5th grade. So that would be 10. Just a continuation. It would be age 10. And right now I'm almost, I have to write about graduating from high school.
Mm-hmm.
And then there is more turbulence. My life has been a turbulent life.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So what is
you want to talk about book 2? I just stay with book 1.
Well, I'm fascinated to know your writing process, and I know that you said book 1 was a lot easier to write. But did you like set aside time to write every single day? So I'm going to work on my book for an hour a day. Like, what is your creative process?
Francine, I don't have one.
Well, maybe that's your process.
I would tell you. I took an online class with an editor on how to write your memoir. And it was, I think it was about 15 weeks, a regular semester. I took it through Prince George's County Community College. And that was a eye-opener. And she taught us about copywriting and making sure that you're not using other people's pictures and so forth. You know, we learn so many different things about writing, which I hadn't considered, but I knew that I needed to know how to do what I was planning to do. And so I did take that class. Okay. And of course, we're supposed to write at least 15 minutes a day. I tried, but I can't write like that.
Yeah. So how do you write? That's why I'm asking. What is your? I know what we're supposed to do and what the experts say is best, but what do you do? Because you are a published author, so you did it. So whatever method you use to do it is your method, and it works for you.
I write when the mood strikes. You know, something happens, and I'll say, "Oh, I have to write." Sometimes I will wake up in the middle of the night. I have to write. And I'll just write and write and write for maybe 5-6 hours. And I can't stop until I run out of words. And that's what happens to me. When I get the urge, I have to write. I mean, it's there. And I have no control over it. And so that's why I said I don't have one, because if I sit down to just write, I could probably do it, but it wouldn't be my best work.
Yeah. Well, then that's your process, and it works for you. I think I'm the same way. It's very hard for me to turn on this creative, like just go start writing, because it is a creative process at the end of the day, and sometimes you can't just turn that on and off at whim. You have to just take it when it comes.
I really believe that I'm not a writer. I don't. Okay, you're smiling. I don't.
No, I'm saying that because I don't think I'm a writer either when I literally write for a living. So I understand the identity crisis that comes with it.
I think once I finish this book, that's going to be it. What I can do is help somebody else write, because I've always been good at that. I can pull it from them. I can help them put it into words. I can help them stretch their words and their sentences. I get them to think about things they hadn't thought about. That's where the teacher comes in. And I've helped people win money. I've helped, I don't know, kids win prizes and certificates and whatnot, because I help them with their writing.
So what is your advice to people who, feel like they have a book inside of them, but they don't know how to start, or they might be afraid to start? What is your piece of advice for people like that?
My advice is to force yourself to write something. I don't care what it is. Try to write a poem. You don't have to write a book. Write a letter to someone. Write a description of a day, an event, just anything to put you in the mood for writing, so that you can see that it's not a job. It's not supposed to be a job. It's supposed to be freeing. It's supposed to be wonderful, mood lifting. You're supposed to receive some kind of joy at the end of it. Because you're writing for yourself.
Yeah.
No one is making you write.
Yeah.
I like poetry.
Do you write poetry as well? Or you just like to read?
I like to read. And I have written poetry, but poetry is not something that I want to write a book of my poems. No. I have a friend who is a poet and she just has to write poems. But no, not me. But I like to write poems.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's
All
why I
right.
say I'm not a writer.
You just have published a book, but you're not a
I
writer.
have just, yes.
Teasing you. Why do you think, I think a lot of writers actually have a bit of an identity crisis around calling themselves that. Why do you think that is?
Calling myself a writer?
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm not in the field of writing. I'm not with other people who write. I don't belong to a club. I'm not in a class, organization. And I just think writing is very personal. I think that's what it is for me. It's very personal, and it's just for me.
Yeah, I understand.
Thank you.
So, we've talked about how writing is very personal for you, but why did you decide to share your story publicly? What do you want people to get from your story?
Okay. Since, I don't know this for sure, but I think I might be the only author I might be the only African American author of a book on polio.
Yes, I haven't seen any others.
There might be some out there, I don't know, but most people, other artists, authors have said the same thing, that there's little to nothing. So if I've written my book, I've taken the first step. Perhaps it will lead others to do the same. Yeah. If they should want to. Yeah. But at least the door has been open for other African Americans to write about polio.
Yes, and I'm very happy you decided to share your story, because this was something that I was not aware of at all. And through your story, I learned so much about the political climate at that time. And like I said, even just like comparing it with COVID and
right,
the social aspects surrounding it, it was very interesting, and I'm very happy that I was able to read it. Do you have anything else that you want people to know about you and about your book that we haven't covered?
There's one thing, and that is my book is also saying hello or goodbye to Black Atlanta.
Mm-hmm.
All of the things I'm writing about in my book about Atlanta, they no longer exist. The schools are gone. The railroad is gone. The drugstore is gone. The names of the streets are no more. They've been changed. I mean, I don't know whether I'm saying hello to these things or goodbye to these things. But if you are from Atlanta and you're Black, you're going to recognize these places. Mm-hmm. And that was another part of writing the book. Mm-hmm. And for you and me, I don't know if there will be a book 3, because my editor says we can wrap it up in book 2. But my gosh, I've already written almost 70,000 words, and I'm just graduating from high school. I said, I haven't gone to college. I haven't gotten married. I haven't had a career. I haven't retired. I haven't had post-polio. I haven't talked about being, well, depression was supposed to have been one book. Mm-hmm. And I decided I can bring depression into all of the books. I can just be the narrator and step aside, and I can talk about some of those things. So I don't need a whole book for that. And my career, 50 years of teaching, mm-hmm. maybe 5 pages. I'll just have to condense. So I think I might be able to do it. I'm going to try.
Yeah. Well, that was really all the questions I had, but there were some things that were brought up throughout the course of the interview that I'm curious about. So can you tell me about post-polio?
Okay.
What it's like. I know that like as a child, you were already told to expect this, like this is something that's going to stay with you for life. So what did it feel like as a child getting that prognosis, and now that it's kind of manifesting again? What has that been like for you, not only physically, but psychologically as well?
It was, well, I knew it was going to happen because I was told that when I was 18 and I was released from the doctor's care, the polio doctor's care, Dr. Bennett. And he said, I don't want you to gain much weight because you have to prepare for 30, 40 years down the road because polio is going to come back. Mm-hmm. And he was absolutely right. It was around 1981 when I started falling. Here we go again. Mm-hmm. But I wasn't thinking about polio because I was falling. I was thinking that something was in the street, something was on the floor, But I started falling, and the fatigue. I started using a cane, even without having a doctor tell me, because I couldn't walk. And then I went from a cane to crutches, and from crutches to a motorized scooter that I use when I have to walk more than a block. So that's just about all the time. I keep my scooter in my van. That was devastating when it was devastating when I was told I had to return to the braces, because in book 2 I have an operation at 15. And that's supposed to take me out of the braces forever. But 40 years later, I'm back in the brace. I'm back on crutches. And like one doctor said, it's like having two meltdowns.
Yeah.
No, it was terrible to have to go back and readjust my life, but that's what I did. I had to learn how to live with it. I'd done it once, so I had to do it again.
Yeah.
But that didn't mean I liked it.
Yeah.
I still have a brace, crutches. I have to rest a lot. Let's say if I make up a bed, then that's going to put me in the bed for a couple of days because I'm going to be so tired. Yeah. I'm not going to be able to do anything. So I have somebody who comes in every 2 weeks to clean my house. I have a young lady who lives with me. And Lori, yes. Yes. Lori lives here, and so she loves to cook.
Ah. Nice.
Yes. And she's nice to me too. So my psychiatrist said that he's the one who told me I was chosen. He said, because of you, you have given hope to a lot of people. You have made people brave who probably wouldn't be brave if they didn't have you staring them in the face every day. And you don't let anything slow you down. There isn't anything that you don't do. There isn't anything that you want to do that you don't do. But that's not true. I would love to travel, but unless I get a travel companion, I can't do it. Yeah. So there aren't that many things that I can't do that I want to do, but traveling is one.
Yeah, but you do maintain such a positive attitude. Yeah. And like even just writing a book about the whole experience, I can't think of a better way to, turn lemons into lemonade, as they say. So
thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing your story. I'm excited to learn that there's a part 2 coming. If there's more to tell, like write the part 3, write the part 4. Like if there is more to your story, then keep telling it. Yeah.
I'd like to say that I wrote a review for another writer who happens to be an RN. She's more than an RN. She's almost a doctor, and her book was entitled Polio Girl. And so I wrote about the comparison between the two books. And she wrote to me. She actually wrote to me, reached out and wrote to me. So we've been conferring. But she's more into writing than I am. But she wants somebody to dig deeper and go into the history of the politics of polio. She said, do you know anybody who can do that research? I said, no. She would love to do it, but she's still working and speaking about polio.
Right. So you've been able to find community. You've been able to find a community through the book.
Well, I found her.
I think the community is going to keep growing because there are so many people who went through what you went through, and their stories just have not been told because.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I was wondering who was going to buy a book about a little girl. But so far, my friends have done real well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And everybody like you is waiting for book 2.
If it's written in a similar style, because I love the voices, like I mentioned in the beginning. I love the 7-year-old voice and then the narrative voice. I thought it was a very interesting way to write it. So I think the method of storytelling is very compelling, and I think people are going to be drawn into it for that reason, because I am so far removed from this story in every way. I'm not an American. I did not
Oh,
grow
you're
up.
not?
No, I'm actually Jamaican.
Okay.
So I am very far removed from the story, but still I was able to read it and find ways that I could resonate with it, because I remember being 7 and having some of those thought processes.
Mhm.
And even, being here in Austria, sometimes I look at these Austrian children and I'm like, you're just a child. I was a child doing the same thing. So I
Mhm.
think anybody from any generation, anytime could read this book and find a way to resonate with it and to be inspired by the strength found in the book. So, yeah.
And I want to thank you for reading my book and for understanding the little girl.
Yeah.
I mean, you really understood the little girl, and you understood me. I have to put it like that, from beginning to end. Thank you.
Thank you for saying that. I appreciate you saying that. I'm still not finished, but I got it on my Kindle. I'm so happy that you got it
Yes.
on Kindle, because at first it was only available in hard copy. So when
Mhm.
Baba J told me that it was on Kindle, I went and got it immediately. So
Yes, it's on Kindle and softback too.
yeah,
Paperback
paperback, hardback, and ebooks. Yeah,
and Kindle.
yeah,
Is Kindle ebook?
yeah. Kindle is a form of ebook, but there's other
Okay.
forms. Yeah, but Kindle is the most popular one. So yeah.
Okay. That's great.
Yeah. Well, that's it for me in terms of questions. I thoroughly enjoyed the interview, really grateful for your time and your insight. I learned a lot from the book and even more from talking to you. So thank you very much for your time.
And thank you so much. Nice meeting you.
Nice to meet you too.
Yes.
Yeah.